Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Alex and Mo. And Alex and I are very blessed and grateful to have Dr. Roody Joseph sitting with us tonight. We got a lot to learn from Rudy. All right, so he
Hopefully,
and
I'm
Alex are
hoping.
both enjoying the Florida weather. It's been hot today, Maryland, in the 90s. So
Nah,
I can
last
imagine
week
there.
not been nice.
Last week was nice.
It was not nice in Florida. We were flooded. Everyone was swimming down in South Florida.
Oh, I could just imagine the Gators.
You even go sometimes, depending where you at.
Yeah, we do. But I'm in Bowie, PG. So not pro. Oh, we actually did have a tornado recently. So a couple weeks ago. So that was strange, but
See, we're as of June 1st, we're in hurricane season down here in Florida. So
Mm-hmm.
I think one's coming his way, supposedly, or ruin.
Yeah, no, it was supposed to be an active hurricane season this year, like leading up to like the start of it. But yeah, I think I know what you're talking about, Alex. I think there's something brewing in the Atlantic that they're talking about coming our way like this weekend. So we go from a flood last week, just nonstop rain, and now we got a hurricane coming. So it's the summers in South Florida.
yeah. Well, you know what?
It's like,
Well, you know they say, Rudy, you're a force to be reckoned with too. So that's a good intro, right? So
I
give
like
us
that.
a bit of a background as to how you are like here today, like a short synopsis of why you get into physical therapy and now being a professor and operating in business. Well, that's good stuff.
Okay. I guess the synopsis of it all. I'm from the Caribbean, so I'm Haitian. I was born in Haiti, raised here in South Florida, just north of Miami in Fort Lauderdale, up in Palm Beach. And so with that, coming up in a Caribbean household, there was always this focus on what life would be like after school and what would you make of yourself. You can't turn gruff. You gotta be something successful, especially like immigrating here and having your parents come and giving you this opportunity. So from a very young age, it was always either going to be a doctor, a lawyer, or something prestigious. And medicine, I think, kind of always spoke to me a bit more. But the type of medicine that took some time to really kind of like finalize and hone in on. And that didn't happen until the latter period of high school, going into college. I had an aunt who's a physical therapist. She went to UN for PT school, early 2000s. And I would shadow her some summers, just getting a sense of what she did. And then through that, and also my appreciation, love for things like anatomy and physiology, physics, all that kind of started to aim towards physical therapy more so when it came to the medical professions. And then I just kind of went with it when I found myself at FIU. I was writing my undergrad. And from early on, I was on this pre-physical therapy track, doing health sciences as my major. And next thing you know, I found myself in PT school, and the rest is kind of history. The academic piece, me getting into academia and teaching, that's something I actually saw myself doing when I was in PT school. That kind of came through my experience in residency. So shortly after PT school, I took a year. I worked for a little bit. Because FIU graduates in August, and most of the residency program that I was looking at had started by the time FIU would graduate, my class. So I was kind of forced through that to wait the whole year until I could apply again. And that first year, just working in a nursing home, some outpatient clinic locally here in South Florida, kind of reaffirmed my desire to get further education in order to better market myself. Because what was out there and the money that I was making fresh out of school, I quickly realized, that I could make a living, the type of living I wanted just with that. And so for me, residency was the way I was going to better market myself. And so through residency, I was forced to do a lot of teaching, research, and different things. And it's really through that really the door kind of opened for academia. And I stepped right in. And the rest is kind of history. I've been doing academia for about 8 years now. So.
What was your experience in going through the residency process? I did a sport residency myself. Obviously, I don't practice in that field or area or profession anymore. to describe that process, because you ended up going to sports residency at Ohio State. So
Yeah.
prestigious university as a whole, but when you start adding the sports medicine component, and we're talking about big Division one athletic program. So to have that opportunity to interact with that staff and those athletes at the level, what was that experience like?
So interestingly, I was at the Ohio State University, but I was an orthopedic resident going there. So I was one of two orthopedic residents, and then we had also two other sport residents that were still are very close friends of mine. It was really a group of four of us. So I didn't actually do a sports residency. I did an orthopedic residency.
My apologies.
Yeah. Through my time there working with my co-residents, of course, I would see a lot of what they would do. They were the ones who were more so doing a lot of like the traveling with the club teams and different things like that, and working with a lot of the SCS faculty at Ohio State. So my track was more so generalized orthopedics. My foot in the door for like sports medicine actually didn't come until after residency was completed. So that first job I landed after residency at NSU, where I've been since coming back to Florida, that's when really I started to like transition from just like an orthopedic practitioner to an ortho/sports med college level provider. And then from there, it's like I really got a lot of experience as I was going through it. So some hands-on workplace type of experience, and then also learning from like my colleagues, the physicians and therapists and trainers that have basically been my team for the past near half a decade.
So Jimmy had asked, Jimmy McKay of PT Pinecast had asked a question a couple weeks ago: is residency worth it?
Mm-hmm.
So you said absolutely yes, 100% for you.
For me, absolutely. For me, a residency was absolutely worth it. I think residency was the thing that really catapulted me into like the career that I find myself in now. It opened a lot of doors for me, avenues that I'm not sure would have been opened had I not gone through residency. It was through residency that I was able to really get exposed to CSM. Going through PT school at FIU, for whatever reason, where I went to school down south here, CSM, the national conference, was not really pushed heavily at all. Throughout my 3 years, I went to some the state of Florida, like annual conferences, things of that nature, student conclave. But I had no idea what CSM was until I got to residency. And through that residency program, I got the opportunity to have a platform presentation with one of the research projects I was doing with my mentors at CSM. And from there, I literally have attended really every CSM since, with the exception of like the pandemic year. And through CSM now and these conferences, my network kind of grew and became more national. Eventually, Mo, I met you, I think, through Twitter, but our first in-person face-to-face was through CSM. Alex, I think I met you on social media as well. But I think my network would not have grown as quickly and as fast as it did had I not had the mentors through the residency that pushed me to participate nationally in things like the CSM. And then with that, I was able to get early research publication with some of my research mentors, so that my name was out there now in the academic space. Papers getting cited, so on and so forth. So that kind of opened up this avenue that I don't think would have opened had I just been working a 9 to 5 at a local clinic in a shopping mall somewhere. My skill set was able to also like really hone through residency. The foundation was set in PT school, but working with my mentors through the residency program at Ohio State really kind of like refined who I was as a therapist. So for me, I think it was absolutely beneficial. That's not the case for everybody. It's not everybody's scores.
Yeah, I think the scores were very neck and neck on it not being worth it and it being worth it. But where did your passion for research come from, Rudy?
It was more so realizing that I could do it. So like I said, I hadn't really done that much research prior to residency, but when I first started, it was a long line of prior residents that had come before me who had done amazing things. Attended CSM regularly, had like posters and platforms. There was like this expectation, published papers. So every resident group that would come in, you kind of had this expectation placed on you, and you didn't want to be the one group or the person that didn't kind of like meet that standard. And so through that exposure and learning really how to do research through my mentor at Ohio State, I kind of realized I could actually do this thing. And then seeing my projects go from posters to platforms and ultimately being published in AJSM, the American Journal of Sports Medicine, I was like, okay, this is not something that's like beyond my grasp. I did it so soon after PT school. Why not continue this on? And then landing at an academic institution as my real first job outside after residency kind of really gave me the environment to continue with research as well. And I had some faculty, established faculty members, some tenure professors when I first came on as a young clinician, a young faculty member at NSU, who kind of took me under their wing and helped me learn things like grant writing, to apply for those in-house and outside grants, and fund different projects. So all that kind of reinforced my ability and my confidence in my ability to do research the right way.
So for a busy clinician, like I would say Alex and myself, how could we incorporate research into, well, we're both in home health, but in any setting, how can we incorporate research? You hear we have to practice using evidence-based, but a lot of our evidence comes from the people we see in front of us and how they react.
Yeah. One, I'm not going to say you or Alex are basic clinicians. So we'll push back against that a little bit. But,
appreciate that.
Yeah. The incorporation of research into what you do, I feel like it's more so, it could be something as simple as a case study, right? People often look at research and it has to be like this randomized controlled trial, this, that, and the third, have like control groups and experimental groups. That's not really the case. You might have like an interesting patient that you come across, and maybe someone you've worked with for some time, and you want to write it up, and you go through the right means, and you get that permission, so on and so forth. But that could be like the first initial steps. There are so many like journals that make it pretty straightforward to kind of get your name out there in the academic space, whether it be a case study, a case series, so on and so forth. Curious is a very common one that a lot of our students at NSU who aren't researchers at all, they don't even have a license nor degree, but they already have publications on case studies or just literature reviews that they decide to do, and using some like free resources online, they're able to kind of get their name out there. So I think actual clinicians who are just like clinical practitioners can kind of utilize some of those same approaches. Just keep it simple initially, keep it simple, stupid, and next thing you know, that research pillar will kind of like grow over time.
Okay. Now, one of the biggest things I know you and Alex usually go back and forth is the cost of the PT education. So you are in academia now, and you seem to be a strong advocate for residency. So is not putting additional financial burden on a student upon graduation to pursue residency, to come out and possibly make less than six figures?
Yes. This is why I always tell people too, I'm not a fan of every single type of residency. I say do like university-based residencies or residency programs that will actually pay you, to whether they pay you half or whatever percentage of a full-time clinician's salary. Go somewhere where you can actually make money, not somewhere that's going to require you to take out further loans. I know we have like the different models within like residency within our profession of physical therapy, but I would never like tell someone coming fresh out of PT school, already with loans, likely not making enough money to pay back those loans and live based on the region that they find themselves across the country, to go and take more loans for a year's worth of mentorship, or a year and a half, so on and so forth. So no, I'm a fan of residencies that actually pay their residents and do whatever they can to kind of mitigate the cost that these students, future clinicians will incur.
So actually, one of the most recent times that me and Rudy had gone on back and forth and he has a perspective on this because he's a faculty member, he's a clinician, so he's been on both sides of it. But the discussion was about newer members of our profession, recent graduates, and their expectation to be able to mix figures, and how, in a profession that's really not common. But you had it out, hey, there's PhDs, there's other doctorate level non-clinical professions that go through this rigorous education, and then they come out at 6 figures or close to it.
Mm-hmm.
Elaborate a little bit more on your perspective and your thoughts from that standpoint, because you do have a unique perspective. I, in the past, was in a very similar situation, where I was a faculty member as well, and that. But I want to hear your perspective on what a new grad or young professional should be making compared to what their expectation, and kind of down that track.
Okay, so should be making, that's a tough one, right? Because there's so much like variance throughout. If you're in the southeast, on the west coast, the northeast, so on and so forth. Regardless of what that number should be, in general, I don't think that number should be anywhere near the 60, 70K range. I think that was one of the things that we were talking about, especially when I saw that was the same number myself and my classmates, my cohort, were being offered in 2013.
That number's still there.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
Number is still there.
And the number is still there. The number has not changed. Although we know cost of living has changed dramatically. Inflation, price of goods, all these things have changed, but our salaries have not gone anywhere. And so with that, I think it's really on the upcoming generation and new PTs to really push back against some of these things, to reject some of these contracts that are being presented their way, and find different avenues, different means by which to make that degree of theirs work for them. Travel PT could be very lucrative. If you're not that person that finds themselves like tied down to the region for many reasons, whether it's family reasons, so on and so forth, look at the travel therapy as a means to see different parts of this country, and at the same time, early on, make a good amount of money that can really help you get rid of those loans. I had a classmate who did just that. Very soon after PT school, she was basically done with all her loans, and she had traveled most of the country from the Midwest, the West Coast, because she was doing travel therapy. In this era of social media, the degree that we have behind our name, the clinical expertise within the neuromusculoskeletal realm, we can monetize that in so many different ways, because we see other people who are less qualified than us monetizing aspects of what we do on a daily basis. Right, so if you can kind of utilize your platform influence with that degree that you have as a different stream of income, multiple streams of income is another approach. A brilliant woman by the name of Jamel Hill once said that you should have multiple streams of income rather than just one. If anything, she listed specifically about 5. All right, so let's say you have that job that you're doing on a per diem basis. Rather than take a full-time job somewhere, see what the rate is if you decide to do per diem, right? And let's say you forego some healthcare benefits, so on and so forth, because you might be young, like myself. I have insurance, but I can tell you when the last time I've really used insurance to full potential, right? So let's say you don't really need that, or you want to like pay for your own insurance. And so again, a full-time position somewhere, go to per diem route. That your hourly rate will be higher, so on and so forth, make a little bit more money, and then find another stream, whether it's through social media, whether you become a consultant for a local gym or some other business entity. There you've already have probably 3 streams of income that can kind of bolster that money that you're making, which gets you definitely closer, if not past that 6-figure realm. So I think my approach is go against the grain and don't just settle on that traditional model of finding a job, work 9 to 5, do it 5 days out of the week, week after week, and then hope to eventually have your manager, your business owner recognize your value and then want to pay you accordingly.
So you
very good advice.
Yeah, you mentioned that, I mean, definitely I kind of implemented my day-to-day is multiple income streams, right? Like, don't put all my eggs in basket. I've got multiple different things are always at the same time to kind of help things going south. You also have a couple different income streams. You've got, your own business. You've got some other things, projects that you work on. Before it's about that, where did that entrepreneurial spirit, so to speak, come from? Like, where did you get that? I feel like not everybody is necessarily born to be a business owner. Some of them don't have the drive, and that's perfectly okay because it's for everyone. But where that come from you, and how do you, what did you do to kind of foster it and grow it what it is today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's interesting. I think it's something that's kind of grown over time. I wouldn't say it's always been there. If I look at myself in undergrad and grad school, I was not that person who was thinking about business ownership or what my own practice would look like. Nothing like that. But over time, as the years went by, as I got into the workforce, as I quickly realized what I was making was not conducive to the type of lifestyle I wanted to live. As I gained more skill, realized what that skill set could mean for the general population, different industries, so on and so forth. And as I got more and more experience working in outpatients and working in the hospital system and eventually working in academia, and more and more into like the building side of things, looking at, what I was bringing into these entities and then they were giving me back. It wasn't adding up. The math was not mathing. I was like, my skill set is worth this much, and I'm like getting only this small percentage. I was like, nah, there's no way. And this can't be what the rest of my life is. Basically, I do this until I get to a stage of retirement, and even hopefully I have saved enough, or I have enough Social Security still left for my generation to enjoy my life. Like, I gotta find a way to have more ownership of my craft and my skill set now, and then monetize it. And for me, that was entrepreneurship. I started to listen to certain podcasts and follow certain people with that entrepreneurial spirit and that mindset. I mentioned Jamel Hill earlier. I started to speak to people that I knew who were business owners, physicians, that started to collaborate with other therapists, classmates of mine who had started their own thing. And with that, I started to see what could this actually look like for me. And I wasn't really ready to make that transition until really 2019. And it was kind of fortuitous in the way that it happened, because I'm someone who enjoys technology. I'm a techie. I've always been good at anatomy, physiology, of course, the sciences. I'm a physically active individual. I regularly exercise. I love sports. So in 2019, looking at the landscape that was in Florida, I was doing some stuff with the Florida Physiotherapy Association, so I knew some of the things that they were working on legislatively, and telehealth were one of the big things that year. And I was like, maybe that could be an avenue for me to blend all these interests of mine, right? Technology, physical medicine, entrepreneurship, so on and so forth. And then it was that summer that Florida passed their telehealth law. PTs were familiar with that, so on and so forth, and the ways that we could practice remotely. And that fall, I was like, you know what? It's not going to cost me much through some biz to like start an LLC. If anything, there might even be some tax benefits to having your own business and all these things that I had been learning. And I was like, let me just go ahead and do this LLC, side to this business, and we'll see how things grow over time. I wanted to do something that was not going to have much overhead. I didn't want to incur costs, so I did nothing brick and mortar early on. So I was like, it'll be through telehealth. I can kind of like get a few patients that I'm working with remote. Like, that's how I started. You can see how things grow. October 2019, 2020, of course, the world changes. And all of a sudden, telehealth becomes this like viable thing, and everyone's pushing for it in different ways because of how society had changed. And here I was with this telehealth therapy business, and everything was online. Social media was big in your persona, your brand. all of a sudden just like took off. And through that, I was like, oh, I'm ready for this, and this could be like the avenue. And so from there, I just kind of like continued to work and build a business, and eventually we went in person, went brick and mortar. I got an office space in 2021. The other thing I realized with business was, location. It's all about location. And where I was in South Florida, I found this perfect spot with a lot of foot traffic, affluent areas, so on and so forth, that would be able to afford cash-based physical therapy services. So I wanted to avoid the pitfalls of like dealing with insurances. And it was this circumstance, these unfortunate events that kind of like happened with the telehealth law, me starting the business. Unfortunately, the world changed with COVID. And then with that, I just like slowly incrementally started to grow my business, started to market online, market to friends, market to other providers in the area, physicians, PAs, so on and so forth, nurses. I had people that I knew in New York that all of a sudden they were seeing things I was doing on social media and they wanted to like send patients my way. And then it just became this thing where once Pandora's box is open, there's never any closing it, right? So I opened that box, and from there, I was like, I could never not have my own thing. And so the rest was just me trying to figure out now how to do all these things together. The academic piece, because I like education and teaching, and the mentorship that came with like young students, the research, but then I also loved owning my own thing. So it's something that grew over time.
Where do you find the time, Rudy?
I don't know. I can't even say.
Well, that was kind of gonna be my question. What's a typical day like? Like, what?
It varies, honestly. Every day is a little different. But I realize I like that. If anything, it keeps things from being routine and mundane. So on a Monday, I have academic time where I could be working on lectures, on Canvas, grading things, so on and so forth. Office time with office hours with like students. In the afternoon, we have clinic. So I'll be in the sports med clinic for a few hours, 4 to 5 hours. From that, I leave NSU, and then in the evenings, I give some time to art, physiotherapy, my own thing. Now it's transitioned to where I go remotely. I can go to clients' homes, or whether it be telehealth, log on, see someone via remote telehealth, telemedicine. And that's something I can do for 2 or 3 hours in the evening. And that could be like, that's a Monday. Tuesday, then it kind of switches. Tuesdays could be like in the morning, I have like the sports med clinic. In the afternoon, I'm in lab for 4 to 5 hours with the students. And then again, in the evening, I'm doing my own thing. Wednesdays could be like all day, I'm just taking care of patients. And then Thursday could look similar to Tuesday or like Monday. And then randomly, depending on the week, of course, you have meetings with all these committees that I find myself on through NSU or through the FPTA. That can happen at any given week, at any given day. So like I said, every single day it varies. I was the person who like planned well before, but I had to get better at planning. They go to jumble all the different things. So.
What time do you wake?
Huh?
What time do you wake?
Do I what?
What time do you wake up?
Oh, wake up. So I wake up at basically like 6:30, 7 o'clock, honestly. Yeah.
So you mentioned it's not that.
I know folks who wake up at like 5 in the morning, 4. Nah, they can't do
Alex. I'm not fluctuating between 5 and 6, but I'm making sure I get my 8 hours of sleep though, 7 to 8 hours.
There you go.
It's important, very important. So you mentioned about doing case studies before. One of the biggest complaints that many private practice owners say is that a lot of new grads or students don't understand the business aspect of physical therapy. So you being a business owner, but I know you're cash-based, you're not insurance. Do you incorporate any of that in your labs or lectures to help students better learn about billing, insurance, customer service? in case they want to get into a business?
I wouldn't say I incorporate. I speak with students about this stuff, but not in the traditional sense of like your semesters. Like I'm teaching research methods, and I'm not going to build that into that course. But the way I go about it is for different clubs on campus or at neighboring institutions like UM, FIU. Oftentimes, the students are reaching out to me to come and speak to them about things related to like practice. So I've given talks at UM in the evenings or whatnot about physical therapy practice, graphics, pay, inequities related to like practice and care within our profession. So I find unique times to give these like very focused lectures about stuff. But I wouldn't say it's like part of any given like curriculum. Unfortunately, I don't think DPT or even med school curriculum really focuses on the business aspects of practice within medicine. So it's like you have to find this time outside of that too. But students are craving, they're asking for that. They're reaching out regularly to say, come speak to us about these things. Because that's what they're focused on. They want to know, how can I do this or do that? How do I start my business? A lot of them, unlike me, they're already thinking about this stuff in the midst of it. Talked about earlier how that stuff for me really grew over time. I have like second, third year PT students, they already have an LLC. They already have like a foundation. So they're looking to grow this even further.
Yes, I mean they want to maximize it and earn as much money as they can upon graduation or even before graduation. So I don't blame them. And we do see a surge in new grads wanting to start their own business or do mobile PT, some even cash. So the good thing is to get mentorship to avoid the pitfalls that may come with business ownership, because we all know there are ups and downs with it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think mentorship is key, like you mentioned, and having someone and mentorship, that relationship, it's not unidirectional, it's bidirectional, and oftentimes it's coming from the direction of the mentee towards a mentor. A lot of people kind of get that confused where they want a mentor, but then they think the mentor is going to be the one just like regurgitating all this information without them taking any kind of like initiative or first steps and so forth. It's like, no, you have to want and seek that knowledge more so than anything. But having someone there that you trust, that you have a good relationship with, that you can bounce ideas off of, that you can earnestly learn from their successes and their failures. The ones who won't be afraid to tell you, hey, like, I could have done this better, or I tried this and it failed miserably. That's how you gotta learn, right? That's a wisdom piece to it. Oftentimes our best teachers are the errors and the mistakes that we make along the way.
That's very true. Rudy, did you play sports while you were at FIU?
Unfortunately, I did not. That's like one of the biggest regrets of my life, honestly. I love sports. I play sports recreationally, but no, I never played organized sports going through school. Did you, Mo?
Yes, I did. I played soccer in college. In high school, I did track, cricket, and field hockey.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
Pretty well rounded.
Had to be.
What'd you play growing up?
Sport-wise, it was usually between basketball and football. There was a period where I tried soccer in elementary school, and they had me play like I was goalie for whatever reason, because I had like freakishly long arms compared to like everyone else that was like my same age. But that was a short-lived experience. Left that behind, and it just became not soccer, but like basketball and football.
Now, if you're Haitian background, because I grew up in Miami, so obviously I know there's a big Haitian population down in South Florida, and a lot of them, at least in my interactions, was huge into soccer. But you grew up down in South Florida. How much of that would you say was more that basketball, football, as opposed to kind of going the soccer route and that cultural influence?
Yeah, I feel like I came to the States from Haiti when I was 7 years old.
Okay.
I know a lot of people. I had some like undergraduate friends of mine who came to the States when they were like 16, 18, so on and so forth. And for them, I would compare myself to those individuals who spent more of their time in the Caribbean. They loved soccer or football.
Yeah.
That was their sport of choice. That's what they played. But I think me coming to the States at the age that I did, that's kind of what lended to the shift. Because even though it's South Florida, we have a massive Latino population, Haitian, Jamaican population. Soccer is not one of those things that's ever really been that massive here. I feel like football and basketball are far more popular sports compared to like soccer, with the exception of like I guess in the past like year or so since Messi comes his way down here. But yeah, no, I think me being in the States at such a young age, that's kind of what led to that shift.
What was your experience like again, Korean culture, growing up in South Florida and you go Ohio? I mean, we've had Nick on here, who's our resident Ohio reporter, and his picture real cool when you got nothing but land and sitting out in the back drinking nice cold beer. But when you come from South Florida, man, like that got to be a culture shock.
Oh yeah, culture shock is an understatement. Honestly, going there, I had no idea like what to really expect. And I just like uprooted myself from South Florida, went to farm country, and I did not know anybody there. But to my surprise, Columbus, which is where I basically was, and Columbus is a nice city. It's a much bigger city than I thought. It's a massive college town, as you would imagine. Everything revolves around Ohio State. It's a young city. It gave me a lot of like hipster vibes, similar to like what I had heard of like in Austin and like Texas when I got there. Not to that extent, but I felt like there was a lot of outdoor stuff. There was like a lot of festivals and food truck events, different things like that going on. So to my surprise, it was actually a very nice city to be in. The weather might have been the worst piece of it all. Coming from the tropics most of my life, knowing one season and that's like hot or hotter. Yeah. I actually got all 4 seasons when I went to to Columbus. And of course, with my luck, I think at that time they had one of the worst winters that they had ever had in like probably decades. And here I am, this Florida kid, and know anything about scraping ice off of windshields or like salt that would go on the ground and how to drive in snow, none of that. So it was like I had to learn that first winter. I had to learn quickly, but luckily people there kind of helped me out a little bit. I also didn't realize how nice people were in the Midwest. Coming from South Florida, too, like I had to like go places and like why are people just saying hi to me? Like don't do that in the South. It's like something's wrong with these folks. But,
oh no, they do it in the South because they did it in North Carolina, but maybe not in South Florida though. But
right, not in South Florida. And
it's
South
too busy.
Also, South Florida is not the South in the traditional sense of people thinking of like the Carolinas or Georgia or whatnot or Alabama.
I mean none of Florida is, be honest. I mean, I think if you get Tallahassee, Gainesville, that's probably the cutoff where you get some of that. But I do understand what you're saying. I was born in Columbus, South America, grew up in Miami, to undergrad at Florida State, PT school at USF in Tampa, but then my residency was in South Carolina.
Okay.
And that was the true South, right? So a lot of things that you had experienced, I'd experienced this as well. Everybody's nice, everybody says hi, they open doors for you, but like you open a door for anybody, they say thank you. Just simple things like that, which is totally different because it's not what we're welcome to,
right?
Coming from South Florida area.
Yeah, and even like outdoors events, doing things like camping. Nothing I never done in my life. I go to Columbus next thing you know, with my co-residents, I'm like going to West Virginia to camp, and I'm like tubing, and I'm like I didn't even know who this person was any longer. And I'm like, one, you probably wouldn't do that in South Florida because any like random body of water, you don't want to like just throw yourself in there and just go lazy river tubing or whatever the case may be. Gators, snakes, and all types of stuff. So the outdoors scene in the Midwest is very different from anything I was familiar with. But ultimately, great time though. I love being in Columbus. I grew to become this now like hardcore Ohio State football fan. When it comes to college football, don't talk to me about anything but the Buckeyes. So.
Wait. You're a Big Ten versus SC. Oh my God.
So let me ask, who was your childhood team then?
Pro or college?
College.
That's the thing. I didn't have a childhood college team. And then I went to FIU as my undergrad. FIU, we have a D1 program, but FIU's program is pretty young. And it's nothing compared to a Big Ten or an SEC school.
So hold on. Growing up in Miami or South Florida, you like football. We're not a Hurricane fan.
Nope. Yeah, it's shocking, right?
That is shocking because for anybody that lived down there or is down there, that city it supports all of it. Now, I will say, as a former Miami resident, Miami fans fair weather fans. If you're winning, they will support you. If you're not winning, they'd rather go to the beach. And Florida State alumni, I get a kick out of that because anytime I watch the University of Miami on Saturday, you look at stadium for a home game. There's more people at club than there is at the stadium. But that's everything there is in Miami, right? So for me, I'm a Hurricane fan. You know, I had season tickets. We went to watch the Hurricanes, so I was there. You know, Ray Lewis played at the University of Miami. I was there. Edgar and James. I saw all of those guys play at the University of Miami. But then I went to Florida State, and that was it. You know, and Florida State a fan. But it is for you to be in Miami, had no kind of ties to Miami, and now you're a Buckeye.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons behind that too is the fact that you mentioned it, right? It's the fair weather nature of like fandom in South Florida, whether it's the Dolphins or the college level UM. But like so many people are like UM fans, so many people are Dolphins fans down here, but they're only fans of these teams when they're doing well. And on the college side, so many people who are fans of UM have never even stepped foot on that campus. That was the other frustrating thing to me too. I'm like, you have no like horse in this race at all. But here you are, the biggest like UM fan, dressed like head to toe, throwing up the U and all these things. It was
305, the whole night.
305. It's like that was the frustrating part. If anything, I think that's what like deterred me from being like a UM fan growing up.
Yeah, that's man, because that's my argument with my family members, right? Like they all live in Miami, they're all diehard Hurricane fans. I'm like, your only ties, you live in the city.
Exactly.
Like, you're done any affiliated with the university. But so Buckeye fan, who's your NFL team? Because I think me and you've going back and forth. Although I've gone back and forth with everybody on Twitter, as Mo knows. Because everybody likes to come after me. But
no, I think you and we like the same team. I'm a Cowboys fan.
Okay, see.
Yes. I'm a Cowboys fan. I'm sorry, Mo.
Mo's Mo Commanders fan. I don't care what she says.
I don't know why he is putting stuff. I'm a Ravens fan, so yeah.
She's a fair weather Ravens fan.
No. I'm a Ravens fan. But speaking of value, you said you're part of the Florida Physical Therapy Association, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think you can contribute to your chapter or to the association being a minority physical therapist?
What can I contribute to said organization? Being I think that's one of the things. I think that's what they are in dire need of is looking at my organization, and especially being in the state, you know how things are in the state with our governor. I feel like people like me need to be in these spaces, need to be parts of these organizations in order to kind of really have a say in the direction that leadership takes in an organization like the FPTA. And so it was my first like foray into like involving myself at the state level with the FPTA was through a faculty member, an old professor of mine, Dr. Martha Bloyer. She's at UM now, but she was at FIU when I went to school, and she taught me. But she invited me to some meetings when she was like on the board, and I started on as an advocacy director for like the Southeast District. All of Florida is broken up into these different districts under the FPTA banner, and in the Southeast they had an opening for advocacy, so on and so forth. And she known me to always be like very vocal on different things and different topics, and so with that, she thought, hey, this might be a good avenue for you to kind of get involved. And we need a voice like yours, right? So it was through that I started to do some advocacy work at the Southeast District. And then in 2020, going back to that year again, through what was happening that summer with George Floyd, when that occurred, so many of our students throughout the state, but especially in the South, felt like there was no voice for what was happening. They felt like they couldn't speak to their professors at the college level. They felt like the state chapter of the FPTA wasn't really saying anything that would speak to what they were feeling, what was going on. And so it was really through that I then spoke to our, at that time, president about starting a committee related to like DEIA work. Because before then, the FPTA didn't have anything like that. They had all these different SIGs for like, you know, special interest groups on orthopedics and sports med, early practitioners within the first year of practice, all these different like groups within the organization, but nothing related to like DEIA specifically. And so from that, a whole committee was born, and now we have an actual standing committee under the FPTA banner that's tasked to look at things like that, right? Advocacy for students and clinicians, not just like those who are yet licensed, but students, clinicians on matters related to representation, to equity and pay, hiring practices, all these different things that affect individuals within the profession who are non-white and who also make a very small percentage of the PT profession. So I think that's one of the key ways that my skill set benefits a company or a group like the FPTA. It's through that representation piece, because it's not really there.
There are times I sit back and say, I wish I had the type of person I am like when I was a student. Mm-hmm. So sitting in the role that you have as a professor, what type of professor could you be that you lacked when you were a student?
It's interesting. I think being a Black male professor, mm-hmm. That's not something I'd ever seen.
Wait, you didn't have a Black male professor?
I did not have a Black male.
You know, coming to think about it, did I have one on PT school?
I didn't.
No, I didn't.
I had like female,
right?
But I did not have Black male.
Wow, you're right. I didn't have one in PT school either.
Yeah. So it's interesting. In looking at my graduate years, and I speak to other people, and similar. Right? When you think about it, you come to the same realization. One, Black people will make up a very small percentage of this profession. In the academic realm, that number shrinks even more. And then, unfortunately, Black men are barely a part of that equation at all. I know of like 4 other Black male faculty members within PT education nationally. 4 other ones, and the 5 of us are going to be on a panel at ELC later this year. Only because we realize that we are basically unicorns in this profession. And what made us realize this was, I don't know if you remember this, Mo. This was CSM. What was it? Not last year, the year before, 2022. Remember that panel? You might have been on that panel, all right? Dr. Tiffany Adams was on there.
Yes, yeah.
All like the power of women within like our professions. They were all like color coordinated. They had like purple on, so on and so forth, like color of royalty. So I remember sitting in that presentation and seeing that wonderful display of like Black women, powerful Black women, and I thought to myself, like, we don't on the guy side. I don't know if we have 5 of us or more that can kind of like sit on a panel and do something like that. And it's really from that moment, and speaking to Tiff and other individuals, we started having a conversation on why couldn't we have like that same type of a panel, but with Black men? Like, why couldn't we have that at another CSM, but have it just be like Black male focused? So yeah, I think that's one thing that we are lacking, that I didn't have, that still don't see. And one of the reasons why I feel like my role in academia is so important is for those young men coming up to see somebody who can one day be the person providing that wisdom and that direction to the level that we didn't receive it.
Why do you think this, though, Rudy?
Why is that the case?
Yeah, why do you feel? Obviously, it seems like you've got an up-and-coming movement of minority women. So I would say women as a whole, at least in my social media bubble, that are kind of stepping their game, right? Like you've got more of an influence. But to your point, like we don't necessarily see minority men, whether they be Hispanic, Black, whatever the case may be. What you're in academia, what are your like? Why do you think as men, as minority, we're not in those positions, or at least presenting ourselves to be in those positions?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Outside of the fact that, our profession is primarily women, it's founded by women, so on and so forth, which is a wonderful thing. So outside of just that ratio, I think it's a measure of like the same reason for men and women why we see people of color poorly represented in the profession and other like medical professions. It's early exposure, right? So we know like the sooner like children kind of see things, the more they're apt to believe that they can one day be that thing, or they see themselves represented in this space. I don't think enough of us are in front of children at those early like transformative years, like in elementary school, to say, hey, you could be a professor of any sort. You could be a doctor of physical therapy. You could be a physician, whatever the case may be, and look like me. You can have dreads and do all those things. It can be something other than the sports or the entertainment route that's constantly pushed societally, so on and so forth. So I think we have to do a better job of like capturing the minds of people early on in ways that we haven't historically done so. I think that's kind of one of the key areas that we're missing. Interestingly, in one of the committees that I'm on at NSU, and I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but it's also unique. Like at NSU, I teach in the College of Osteopathic Medicine. So my day-to-day is actually, I'm teaching MSK research, manual therapy skills to future DOs, more so than my own PT like students. I get a lot of PT students through clinical rotation. So they'll rotate with me in the Sports Medicine Clinic, but my day of teaching is actually future physicians. But there was this one project, a group of Black women started who were faculty in College of Medicine. They had that same question. They're like, why don't we see a lot of Black males, one, which could into our classes, and then also in the role of like faculty with us here, right? So then they did this questionnaire that they validated, put together, and they went to some local high schools in Broward County, and they identified one for the teachers and the administrators, students of color who were excelling, great grades, could be on track to go to med school, go to PT school, or the case may be. And they sat down with these students and they had these questions, just asking them general things like, why what are you looking to be? What is your career of choice, so on and so forth? And if it wasn't medicine or anything related like the medical field, the question would be like, why not? Right? What's the barrier? What's holding you from like pursuing this, so on and so forth? And oftentimes, the reasoning that those black men gave was they just didn't think it was for them, or that they could do it based on perception, right? They didn't see themselves reflected in it, and then cost. It was way too expensive, they thought, to actually pursue this thing in a meaningful way. So they wanted something that was quicker. So that quicker return on investment, so on and so forth. So I think those are some of the reasons that we're seeing a lot of that. We're not capturing them early on, and by the time they get into high school, even if they're on track to get accepted into a state school, private, whatever the case may be, go straight off to university, they have the grades, they have this belief in themselves that one, it's not for them, it's too expensive, and they don't see themselves reflected there.
Well, there are some barriers that do exist too. You have some gatekeepers. So besides the cost, there are other issues too. Feeling valued and in the place that you have to work in as well too. So if they're not people who are familiar, they're not gonna feel like they're being heard.
Right.
Has it been in your experience that you've had those challenges where your voice has not been heard when you have things to bring up or share that could benefit like your students or even other professionals like yourself?
No, it's interesting.
I'm not trying to get you fired, Rudy.
I'm like, I'm going to be watching this in the future right now. Well, yeah, no, it's interesting. I don't think I've had much barriers to the things that I've wanted to do and things I wanted to say or initiatives. Not to say that they aren't there, and not to say that people don't come across these things, because we know for sure that they are. But I don't think I've actually come across too many like outright barriers against any of the initiatives that I kind of have going on or things that I'm trying to do in that space of like advocacy, DEIA, so on and so forth. Her reasonings for that, I don't know if any of this is potentially true, but I know like where I'm at, it's a private institution. So in that sense, being in Florida, a lot of the state initiatives that the governor has imparted on state universities, taking away funding, all the things that make people very fearful to support things of that nature. We've, up to this point, kind of been shielded from that a little bit. Not to say that will always be the case, just because you're private, but that's kind of been the scenario that I find myself in. I'm in a college that is ran by a woman. So in that sense, I think if you're a leadership, you can kind of identify some of these things and identify their own biases and give you the avenue to kind of work on these issues. That kind of goes a long way, right? So it's like the implicit and explicit biases that impact our like outward expression of things. So if you have leadership that can identify those things within themselves, or if you present that to them, they're receptive to these critiques, I think that goes a long way into like breaking down some of the barriers. If there hasn't been anything, I feel like we bring objective information, data, reasoning behind a lot of things that we're doing. Typically, those barriers kind of go away. I haven't seen any like persistent barriers up to this point in my career, honestly.
Well, I'm going to pose this to both you and Alex because it was something that was brought to my attention. You have Caribbean heritage. Alex has South American heritage. Myself, I have Caribbean heritage. So I was told that there is a difference between us and someone who is traditional African American or descendant ADOS. wherever you want to put it, that we tend to be a bit more outspoken and charged to get things done and say what we want without the fear of getting pushback. So, as you know, Haitians were the first ones who fought for liberation, so you have it in your blood. But do you think that that is the case, that we tend to be a little bit more outspoken, not being fearful of the pushback we may get?
No, I don't. I honestly don't think that's the case. And when I hear stuff like that, I kind of want to push back against it, because I feel like that is just another means of colonialism, like pitting one and the same people against each other, and making it seem like someone else's efforts aren't good enough, or instilling fear to say that, oh, this group just don't have the voice or the gumption or the will to do something like another group will. Historically, that's always been the case. Different groups are like pitted against each other. But in the Caribbean, historically, there's always been a lot of that. Jamaicans, Haitians at one point, feuding in different ways. In the Caribbean, I know a lot of like elder Caribbean people who seem to think that like the influence of like the transatlantic slave trade and slavery and colonialism and all those things were very American. Like the worst of those atrocities happened in America, and it wasn't that bad in the Caribbean. Hence why they're a bit better than this group that comes from here, or even South American, and so on and so forth, or Afro Latinos. All right. So I tend to push back in that other way that tends to happen within our own communities to say, or this group's not as vocal as this one. No, you can find plenty of African American leaders throughout history that are very vocal. In the same way, we can point to plenty of Caribbean leaders throughout history that are very vocal, and not just historical. We can point to people today, existing now, in space now, from a varying range of different backgrounds that are all vocal in their own ways. So yeah, I push against that, honestly.
Alex, what about you?
Yeah, and I think speaking for me personally, I think in the Hispanic culture, the male is seen as a leader, right, as a provider. So I think that there tend to be that males are outspoken. They're going to just voice their opinions and stuff like that. Not to say that women can or don't do those things, but that's just culturally how it's always been. The male fighter, defender of the thing, and so on and so forth. Me personally, I'm the type of person that is going to stick up and really does care or take into account any potential ramifications that make that. With that's not just out of my ass, right? I'm not going to make a fool out of myself or something that is just blatant, wrong or disrespectful. Because I do think that we've lost the art of having a discussion, but more importantly, lost the art of having a disagreement. I think that us three can have many different conversations, and we can have different views on it. But I wholeheartedly feel that we respect one another. So no matter what ends up being with that particular conversation, we're gonna walk away and say, hey, you know what? I don't necessarily agree with Mo, but I get it. Same thing with Rudy. And that's where we kind of lost our train. And I don't know that necessarily has to do anything with where you're clearly from, whether you're male or female. Like I just think as a whole, we kind of lost that. So to have the opportunity and ability to speak up without ramifications, I think at the end of the day, you just have to be conscious of what you're saying and just be respectful. So to Rudy's point, I don't necessarily think it has to be a coach thing. That may be an influence of it, but there's other factors that go into it, and it's kind of believing and standing for what you believe in, right? And the other thing I think is just being confident in who you are as an individual, and not giving power to those outside of you and your inner circle to have the power to make you feel less or not equal or not the, because out in this world there's always going to be somebody who's trying to be down, who's got mean things to say or the case may be. And this is one of the things that I teach my boys every day. It's Mo's heard this before. It's 4011. It's the number to my house to address. And I teach my boys that nobody outside of this house has the power or the ones to change how you feel about yourself, how you think of yourself, because there's always somebody trying to knock you down. There's always somebody out there who doesn't like what you look, how you look, what you say, and they look different or what the case may be. So maybe you got to remember that inside, you got that power, and as long as you hold on to that power, I think it's going to be okay. It's not always going to be easy, but you have the opportunity to succeed and to do something. But the minute we start giving power away to people and how they think and what they think and stuff like that, is when we run into problems.
Yeah, I like what you said there about the knowing who you are, knowing yourself, and in that sense, holding on to your power and not giving that away to anybody. Like for me personally, I feel like that's been one of the more freeing things for me over the past few years. After college and so forth, and this phase of my career, like learning like the true history of like the people of which I come from has been like this freeing thing, because in my younger years I felt like society's like stereotypes of who I was and who like my ancestry was did such a number in like my confidence in myself and what I could contribute to society, so on and so forth. When for years, especially during your formative years, you've been told that you come from a place of poverty and your people have not like contributed much to society, and so on and so forth. That does something to your psyche, or it lends to like this personal belief of who you are and what you come from. But then as you start to peel away the layers and unlearn a lot of that bullshit, you then start to realize the value of who you are as a person, the value of like your ancestry. Mo mentioned earlier, right? That I'm Haitian, being like a member of like the first independent Black republic in the world, the second nation in the Western Hemisphere after America. Even though it took them a long time to recognize us as such, being a part of a place that was like the jewel of like the colonial crown of France for so long, a place with a lot of leaders who influenced leaders here in America, like Tucson, like a lot of Haitian descendants who founded cities in America, like Chicago, major cities, and so on and so forth. Then it's like, oh wait, all that I was told about myself, none of it was true. All that devaluing that was occurring, it was nefarious and it was purposeful, but I actually have so much more to offer. And when all of a sudden that veil is removed from you, you can stand in these places. You can stand in academia, regardless of the university and the setting. You can stand in a medical office with PTs, physicians, PAs, nurses, whatever the case may be, and know that you have something to offer, something of value, outside of just like a degree itself, right? I thought like the skill set of like what comes with a degree. You as a person, you have so much to offer. That space and those people in society all comes from like knowing yourself.
It's easier. Life, like honestly, for me, life's so much easier when you just don't give a dang what anybody else thinks or how they, what it is that their opinion may or may not be of, and that's one of the things for me personally, like just don't care. And my wife will be like be like you, like where the little things don't nothing bugs me, like, and I don't say that to be like this perfect person because I'm from perfect, But the idea that, man, I know who I am, I know what I can do, and at the same time, I know what I can't do. So I'm not going to put myself in a situation where it puts me at risk. But man, I'm confident where I'm, and I don't need that outside validation. If it comes, great, but I don't need it. And at the social media world, we're looking for that validation outside of, right? And it's understanding, like, man, I know who I am. When I wake up, I take that breath. I know exactly who I am. And that's just want to be day in, day out, regardless of what I look like or what the case may be. And there's challenges to it, man.
You guys readers?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, more audiobooks,
probably more than myself.
More audiobooks though.
Oh, audiobook. Okay. Have you read The Art of War, Sun Tzu?
It is in my library, so it's
bits and pieces.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great one. It's not a long read at all, but it's a great one. From a wartime manifesto, that so many aspects of that book can be like transitions in different phases of life. So what you were just saying, Alex, just reminded me a lot of that. There's one key quote from there that talks about, if you know yourself, you know your enemy, then you won't fall in 100 battles, right? So the victory is kind of like, I'm like butchering that quote, but basically saying that victory is like guaranteed in the sense if you know in yourself and also knowing who your enemy is.
Yeah, and that's a
so
great
as
way
we get close. I got one more question, which is kind of in with me. So you're obviously a busy man. You take on a lot of tasks. You've got a lot of good things going on. What's your support structure like?
It's great, honestly. Family dynamics has always been like big for me, and I think it's also like a cultural thing. But I'm married, so my wife was also in medicine. She's a PA in general surgery. Known each other for a long time, undergrad until now, going back to like 2006. So it's been a while. Been married for 6 years, so having like a partner who kind of themselves, like as you would imagine, she's busy in her own right. Can understand, knows you, has seen you transition through different phases of your life. That goes a long way in supporting you in that interpersonal space. But then family members as well. Pretty close with a lot of cousins of mine. I have a big cousin network. Pretty big family. I have siblings, younger siblings of mine. My parents, aunts, uncles, and I think the family dynamic is like one of the key pillars for me, and the thing that I like really lean on. We're all in pretty close proximity, so a big number of us are in South Florida, although different people are like spread throughout the South, Georgia, people like Virginia, even the Northeast as well. But we make it an effort, especially as we all are getting older, to come together at different times and take trips together to be around each other. I really feel like it's that family dynamic that really helps with a lot of the things that I have going on. And as I've gotten older, friends, I have friends for sure, but what do they tend to say? Like the friend circle definitely narrows the older you get. From like you were an undergrad to like now, you might have like a handful of people that you can say are like legit like friends. You might know a lot of people, but friendships really become very like specific. So I think family to me has always been that thing, that pillar.
That's awesome. So yeah, I think on that note, we'll wrap up. Man, thank you so much, bro. We really appreciate your time coming out with. Obviously, you're a very busy man, and so thank you for carving out some time for Mo and myself. Really do appreciate it.
No, thank you. I appreciate you guys having me on. For one, I was like, I've seen the posts. Of course, we all follow each other on social media. I see the guests that you guys have on there. So then when Mo reached out, you guys reached out a few weeks back. I was like, oh, made it. I'm there.
You know, I meant to ask you when we were in Boston, but I was like, you know what? I'll catch him next time around. So yeah.
Nice.
Awesome.
Thank you all.
No, thank you for having. Thank you to all of our followers, watchers. As always, continue to follow, like, share, and all the good stuff. We've taken a new approach to this I think is working pretty well.
Yep.
And it's giving us a nice balance between having these meaningful conversations and still being able to partake in day-to-day business family wise. So thank you all for your support. Catch us here. We got a couple of good episodes coming up here in the month of July. We'll have our time guest now. Nick will be coming on, so he's a big hit.
And also David from MPT Final Frontier as well. So those are two upcoming guests in July.
Nice.
Awesome. Well, again, to everybody, have a good evening. Everybody take care.
Happy Juneteenth.
Juneteenth. Sure. All right, y'all take care.
Bye-bye.
See you.